Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Fall River Heritage State Park. My name is Jim Lopes. I am your Visitor Services Supervisor. I want to welcome you all to a new season here at the park. This season we have a special theme. It's about the new Americans. It's about Fall River, a city of immigrants. It's about multiculturalism, all those great things. This month our theme is arrivals. We have a number of exhibits here. One exhibit's on loan from the New Bedford Railway Museum. It's called Yankee Boleros. It's all about it's all about the whalers and sailors from the Azores and Cabo Verde and how they came to America and settled in New Bedford and Fall River. We have our permanent exhibit here, which is about all the textile workers in Fall River, who were primarily from they're French Canadian, they were English, they were Portuguese, and they were Irish, and from all over the world. Made Fall River the #1 textile city in America, #2 in the world. So we have that permanent exhibit, and we have photos on the wall, the faces of Fall River, which show the faces of these workers. And people who come here are always surprised to see that most of the workers were either women or they were children. A lot of the children between ages 10 and 12 supporting their families. You can see all their pictures here. The other exhibit we have this summer is from the Commonwealth Museum. It's a museum in the state of Massachusetts. It's African Americans in the maritime industries. It supports our theory of arrivals in America. It tells the story of the Underground Railroad. It tells the story. Well, this area is an interesting area in conflicts because on the one hand, you have New Bedford, which was an abolitionist port, and the home of Frederick Douglass and a number of other people who escaped slavery and through the Underground Railroad. And on the other hand, we have Bristol, Rhode Island, right up the river. And Bristol, Rhode Island was one of the leading centers of the slave trade. You know, people don't know that. Rhode Island had the leading slave ports in the state of in the U.S. Okay, but today we're celebrating contemporary immigrants with a wonderful photographer, Mark Chester, who has previously displayed his works at in Lowell. It's Lowell, right? Yes. In Lowell, and we're glad to welcome him here in Fall River. But before we do this, I'm going to give you a citizenship test. How many of you can pass the citizenship test? Okay, you ready? What did the Declaration of Independence do? Any answers? What did the Declaration of Independence do? I don't hear any answers. Yes?
It was the American colonists' basically declaration that we want freedom and independence. But it was not the end, it was in the period.
Can you give an answer without using the word declaration?
She's correct.
It's a document that...
But the Declaration declared, that doesn't tell me anything.
It's a document that stated an argument and a position for the independence of the 13 colonies from England with the principles of liberty, freedom, and did it have justice?
Okay, one of our guest presenters, who is an immigration attorney, is nodding her head like, I guess you've answered the question. I don't know.
I think you gave him more than he was hoping for.
Here are the official answers. The Declaration of Independence announced our independence from Great Britain, declared our independence from Great Britain. So it announced and it declared.
Okay. I used the word.
And it said the United States is free from Great Britain. Okay, my mind tells me I just said the same thing 3 times, but okay, I'll give you 2 more questions. What are 2 rights in the Declaration of Independence? Can you answer these questions? Could you become a U.S. citizen? If you were coming in right now, taking the test, could you pass the test and become a U.S. citizen? Now, what if your first language was not English? Okay, what if your first language was Croatian? What if your first language was Vietnamese? Could you pass this test? What are 2 rights in the Declaration? O Declaração de Independência.
Mark, are you listening?
Can you answer? What are the 2 rights?
I'll give you
One?
Freedom of religion.
So this is 2 rights in the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, the Declaration of Independence. Not
Yes.
the Bill of Rights.
Excuse me?
Not the Bill of Rights.
No, this is Declaration of Independence. We have life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Okay? You get 1 more chance to pass, otherwise you all have to go back to school here, okay? What is the supreme law of the land? Okay, and I'll give you a hint. It is not Diana Ross. Okay? So, what is the supreme law of the land?
Increasingly trouble. We turn to you.
of life, liberty, and
Is the Constitution.
You have to leave. It's
He gave me
it's the Constitution. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so now we know that you
No,
all
I
have
get to stay.
you all have to go to citizenship
Not
class.
anymore.
So today, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce to you the faces of people who have come to America, who are facing these questions, who are learning about America, people who want to become citizens, who want to become Americans. And Mark Chester, our photographer, is going to introduce himself. He's going to walk you through this, and he will be joined by his colleague, who will explain to you the lives of modern-day immigrants and the struggles that they face as they arrive in this country. Okay? So, again, welcome to Fall River Heritage, and here's Mark Chester.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all. Can you all hear me? Those in the back, you can come closer if you want. So I'm very honored to be here at the Visitor Center to have these photographs in the DCR. Tell me again, the DCR stands for?
Department of Conservation and Recreation.
Say again, please.
Department of Conservation.
Department of Conservation and Recreation. So these are state sites, and they have facilities like the one we're in, and they have wall space. And I had presented this this proposal of exhibitions, of photographs, actually to Lowell was the first one, and then he referred me to this one. So it's very happy. So these are photographs of foreign-born residents of Massachusetts who have become naturalized citizens. So that's the premise of the book, to show the cultural diversity of Massachusetts. And every 10 years the census comes out, and I was going through it, and I noticed there were over 100 nationalities in the census, and it just piqued my curiosity to wonder, well, where are they? How do I meet them? How can I photograph them? And to put together a book of all the people to share their cultural diversity. Now, I'm not getting into any personal life story of them. Mainly, it's to have their name, their date of birth, date of citizenship, and the city that they reside in, and let them tell the story through their portrait. So that's basically it. And then we've added some other elements to the book that helps it be an educational supplement for teachers. There was a 4th grade teacher who came to an exhibit in Falmouth, Massachusetts, where I had these, and she said, this is a great lesson plan. I'm going to write a lesson plan. She gave me the lesson plan, and I incorporated it into the book. So it has an educational component of our identity. How do we feel about our identity and about others? And who are they, and where are these countries located? So I've learned a lot about geography. I've traveled the world, really, in the last 10 years without leaving the state. So I'll just run by these photographs, but let me tell you, so that was the inspiration, was the census. There was also, I had an assignment to photograph Ellis Island in 1978 that Charles Kuralt wrote an essay, which is, it's a wall panel here, and it's a very moving essay. And when I was there, it dawned on me that I am a first generation son born to a father from Russia, from Belarus. So I grew up with his parents who spoke Yiddish, and English was a little fractured, but it was enough that I understood. So those elements kind of started this whole project of mine, and I thought I could be finished in a couple years. Well, I started taking pictures in 2011. The first exhibition was at Worcester Museum in 2015, and since we've had 90 different venues throughout the state. So this is one of the venues. So this is the book. This is a dummy of the book, prototype, that we will be giving to schools and to libraries and to the participants themselves. I met the participants at their naturalization ceremony that I went to over the years. Different venues, and Faneuil Hall is one location, Heinz Auditorium, Seaport, International Trade Center, Heinz I said, Springfield Federal Court in Boston, Worcester and Mechanics Hall. So I've been to a few of these, and each one is different, and that's where I met a lot of the people. The public affairs officer of the USCIS, United States Center for Immigration Services, helped me and sent me the different immigration ceremonies with the countries. They were only the countries, so I didn't know if it was a male or a female from that country, and I would go to the ceremony. Has anyone been to a ceremony? Have you been to a ceremony yourself? Well, it's really an enlightening experience, because we take for granted, if we're born here in the United States, to feel what others are feeling when they're announced, you are now a citizen. It's an amazing feeling. And as Jim was explaining about the questions, I mean, it takes 5 years at least to become a U.S. citizen once you start the application. So it's an important process now, and continues to be for years to come. So I went to a ceremony in Springfield, Massachusetts at the Armory, and there was a couple from Rwanda, and I had not met anyone from Rwanda. This is the lady from Rwanda. This is a lady from Jordan. I had gone to the Boston Islamic Center and introduced my project to the director of marketing there, and asked if he would put in a call for entry, not call for entry, but a call for participants in the newsletter. And I got many responses, and this woman, Anas from Jordan, responded, and we met in a Mediterranean cafe in Boston. So I'm trying to take pictures that their background relates to who they are somehow, and many of the participants selected the places, or it was just a matter of meeting them where they were at that time. For instance, in Rwanda, this is this lady. This is at the U.S. Armory, the Armory, Springfield Armory. This gentleman is from New Bedford. I was at the Whaling Museum, and we struck up a conversation, and I told him what I was doing, and he said, well, why don't you come by my workplace, and we can take photographs there. And that was that. And this is a couple from Sri Lanka, and they were referred to me by a woman from Lithuania who lives on Cape Cod, where I live. And also, this is a gentleman from Ethiopia and his two boys. And I met him at a cultural festival, multicultural festival at Cape Cod Community College that they had during the early years. And so I met him, and everyone was just receptive to being part of this book. And so it makes me feel gratified and part of their family, as a matter of fact. I mean, that's how I feel. This gentleman is from Equatorial Guinea. There are 54 countries in Africa, and that was one of the more elusive countries. I just could not connect with anyone from Equatorial Guinea. And finally, the list came up on the ceremony list that I received from USCIS, and then connected with this gentleman. And he wanted to be photographed by the wharf somewhere, so I found this location. And I like that it says Hercules, because he is kind of a Herculean sort of guy. So that worked out. This lady is from Spain. She's a yoga teacher in Falmouth, and I was introduced to her by a friend. And so this was right after one of her yoga practices. This is a funny story. She's from Bahrain. I was at a ceremony, and on the list was Bahrain. And the field supervisor who was handling this ceremony knew of what I was looking for, so she made the announcement, would the person from Bahrain please come up? And so it gets a little tenuous when the supervisor is asking somebody to come up, and then she introduces me and I tell the person what I'm doing, and so it's kind of a sigh of relief in a way. And so it was a gentleman, and he was actually born in India and lived in Bahrain with his wife, who was born in Bahrain. So he referred me to her, and I gave him all the information, and she just sent it to her, and then she got in touch with me and said she was going to be on the Cape such and such a time, a place, and so we met, and she was wearing this kind of patterned dress, and I found this building. So I'm thinking, you know, what is a good background? But you want to see the person. So the background is not, it's secondary. You want to get a feel for the person. So you don't want the background to be a distraction, but you want to make it a visually interesting portrait. So that's how I'm thinking about taking these. So they're not duplicated. They're not just a headshot like a passport shot. So they're called environmental portraits. This gentleman is from Togo. He was referred to me from a gentleman from Guyana. It's an international community. Everyone knows everybody, it seems. This woman is from Madagascar, and she happens to live in my same town as I do. And, excuse me, and so we met. So I'm trying to photograph a man and a woman from each country to give it, I like to call it Noah's Ark. Noah's Mark. Anyway, so this gentleman is from Madagascar, and I wanted to have that pairing, and we met in Cambridge. That's where he works, and so we met in Cambridge. This lady is from Guatemala, and JFK Museum and Library is another. El Salvador, excuse me, thank you. And this gentleman, I walked into this restaurant in Boston, a Thai restaurant, and he had his certification, he had his certificate of citizenship framed sitting on its counter. I mean, that's how proud he was. So he was very happy to be part of this project. And I'm going to introduce my cohort here. Jennifer, this is she and her brother. And Jennifer is an immigration attorney, so I asked her to bring her immigration law book. I'm trying to, you know, give it a little styling here. So let me introduce you to Jennifer. She's an immigration lawyer, and if you have any questions, but let her tell you about her experience in her life. Jennifer, come on up.
Mark, I'm very honored to be part of your project. Thank you for inviting me here. And I'm going to give you a little bit of my history, where I come from. I was born in Guayaquil, Ecuador. And as a child, I did not know people from any other country but just Ecuadorian people. My father was involved in international business, and he traveled to many Latin American countries, and he also had the opportunity to do some businesses here in the United States. And this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. So in the early 90s, my father came to the United States, and he was working for a company. And there was a law at that time due to Bill Clinton administration that if a company sponsors somebody, that person can get legal status through the job. So that's how I end up in the United States. My father got this job, his company sponsored him, and my mother and my family, my siblings and I, we left Ecuador. When we left Ecuador, we came to the city of Queens, New York. And I remember I came from a tropical place. I never saw the snow. So as a child, at that time I was about 10 or 11 years old, seeing for the first time the snow, I was like in a movie. It was beautiful. And I just couldn't believe that now this was going to be my home. When I started school, Queens has people from all different nationalities. And I met people from all different countries, from India, from Croatia, from Russia, from other countries in Latin America. I had Muslim friends, I had Jewish friends. And it just touched me that how we are in this one place with people from all different nationalities getting along. And that brings me to emotions, because sometimes when I think about the wars that are going out in the world, it's nonsense, it's political. We can all get along. And that brought me to, as I grew older, to wanted to practice immigration law, to defend people from different countries. I moved to the state of Massachusetts back in 2008. I went to law school here in Massachusetts. And after law school, I decided to stay here. I felt the need in Massachusetts because I feel that this state needs more diversity in a way of representation. We have a lot of immigrants from all different cultures, different nationalities, but when it comes to higher level of education, I don't find that many attorneys are from other countries. Majority of the attorneys in this area are white people, not to say anything bad about that, but it's just that sometimes people feel more better to talk to somebody who can understand their issues, what they're going through. So I represent people from all over the world. I have clients from Pakistan, Bangladesh, the Philippines, Thailand, from Central America, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. I have also clients from Brazil, Ecuador. I have Portuguese clients. I have Irish clients. Many people, they don't think that a white person with blue eyes, blonde hair, that speaks English can also have no legal status, but there's people that come from other countries and they stay in this country and they are afraid. They have fear, and sometimes they don't get to talk to an attorney due to those fears. And this is what I do. The laws right now are very, very hard to get to citizenship. And I want to explain a little bit of the process, because there are a lot of, I guess, ignorance out there that people can just come to this country and just get legal. Or why doesn't that person get citizenship? Why hasn't that person applied for this? The laws are complicated and not everybody can apply. So to start this, in order to get legal status, most likely someone has to be petitioned by either a US parent, a US child, US citizen child, and many people that come from other countries don't have US relative, immediate United States relative. That law that when I came in, that my father was allowed to stay here, is no longer in place. It was actually out in 2001. So there has been a lot of people coming in from different countries, and to get legal status, it's really, really hard. Now, why people come here? Well, I guess there's a dream, the dream to have a better life. And United States has this propaganda, even in movies, that you come to the United States and this is what your life is going to be. And many people watch these movies, or in their mind, they picture the life, if I just go there, my life will be different. And this is why they come here. There are a lot of wars going on right now worldwide. We have a refugee crisis. And the refugee crisis going on right now, it's worse than when World War II was happening. We have people dying in Honduras. The average of death in Honduras is about 13 to 14 people in a week. And that's a lot of people to a small country. There are gangs invading Central America, like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. They call it the death triangle because there's a lot of death happening in these countries. So that's why we have a lot of people right now from these countries escaping those countries, because one of the things they have said to me is, if I'm going to die, I'd rather die dying to a better place or trying to get to a better place than dying stuck here. And that's something really touching. When someone tells you they're going to die, they know for sure, for certainty, that they're going to die. And it's not just older people. I had children as young as 7, 8 years old that have experienced the violence, kidnapping. They have been tortured. And really that breaks my heart, because no one really knows their stories. They don't know what they go through. Now, going back to getting legal status, it's a hard process. Once they get to obtain legal status, in some situations, they have to wait 5 years. And after they get 5 years of being with their green card, they have not committed any crime. Right now, also, a new policy is that they cannot get any assistance either from the city or the state or the federal government at all in order to get to apply for this type of status. So once they get legal status, then they can apply for citizenship after 5 years. In some cases, when they're married to a U.S. citizen, they can do it after 3 years. The citizenship process is really tough. Like, we were asked those questions, those citizenship test questions. They are about 100 questions. And they are, in the past, and I say in the past, like 2 years ago, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Office used to give for free a book with all the questions in a CD. That book is not available anymore. They're not given to people. And many people find themselves, how did I study for the test? How did I get to know the answers, read the answers? So luckily for me, I kept a book and a CD, and what I've been doing is I've been taking it to a store where I can reproduce them and giving them out to those clients that come to me asking me for help. There is YouTube, there's a couple of websites that to help out people. They have scanned the book and put them online. But if someone has no access to computers, to internet, right now having internet service can be very expensive, how can they study for the test? On top of that, the test is not just knowing the civic questions, but it's an oral test, it's a written test. So they had to be able to write. They might dictate a question and answer, and they had to be able to write it grammatically correctly. Now, one of the toughness situations that I have experienced is what do I do with clients that never went to school? They are illiterate. They are, I had clients that they escaped violence, but their entire life they lived in poverty in their country. Their countries do not offer free education, and they never went to school, and they cannot read or write. How can they take the test? Sometimes their family members, their children who are U.S. citizens help them memorize those questions, but they know it by memory. But when it comes to the handwritten, they can't do it. So this is how it gets challenging. And sometimes they get rejected. And there's people that can be here for many, many, many years, and sometimes they just give up. And they say, well, I just can't pass it, and they never take the test, and they never become U.S. citizens. Right now, there's a new policy that if, well, it's not new, but it's just being implemented. that if someone has been charged of a crime, any crime, and anything can be a crime right now, has the potential of being taken away their green card. So if someone has been here since a child, but never became a citizen, and it doesn't even know that country that they're from, doesn't even speak the language where they're from, but they did bad decisions in their life, now the Department of Justice, they're being taken to an immigration court, and sometimes, or most likely right now, a lot of cases are being removed from the country, and they are actually taken to a country where they don't know the language, they don't know the people, they don't have families, they don't know anything. And I understand the laws, I respect the laws, but it's also tough for these people that they never experienced being in their countries. They did not grow up in those countries, and now they are being sent back to these countries. So that's how it is right now. It's not easy to get legal status in this country. It's really tough. But everybody has that dream sometimes where they don't have legal status. Their dream is to get this workers authorization, to get their green cards, like the dream that they just fantasize if they can just get that. And that's what makes my job really, I love what I do, that it's not just helping one person, it's helping families get to this dream. And I appreciate for you being here. And if you guys have any questions about immigration law or about anything, you guys can feel free to ask them if you have any questions. Yeah, yeah, sure.
I work in healthcare. People who need some form of mass health coverage, and in order to receive medical care, what do they do in today's United States? Do they not apply for state assistance because it might jeopardize with any future plans they have in terms of citizenship?
Yes, so that's a sad question, because it's what's happening right now is that I have a lot of my clients that were in Mass Health and they had to renew their application, but because of the new policy that if they get any city or state assistance and they are in this process, they are afraid that it might be jeopardized and that they can, instead of get legal status, just be deported back to their countries. So most of these cases, they are not getting any type of insurance. They rather be without insurance, and they pray to God that nothing happens to them, and just as long as they don't get any assistance or any help. But it's very tricky because the government knows when they are at these interviews, the government knows that some people really apply because it's offered to them. They don't know. Sometimes they have to, they need to, if they need to get a physical checkup. But now they are using that as a public charge. So the public charge means that that you actually are a charge to the government, and because you are charged to the government, you cannot get legal in this country. So that's something really new that's been happening. And I'm afraid that people that are in Mass Health or get assistance, because they are people that lack, are indigent. They don't have enough money. They don't make enough money. They do low wages jobs. They don't have money to help out their children that are U.S. citizens. So sometimes they feel the need to get into this assistance, but right now, that could be a jeopardy to their case.
So you're counseling your clients to not apply or not renew Mass Health or not apply for it unless it's an emergency? If they have any ideas about becoming, does that go for a green card as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm advising my clients is that it's better off to buy your own healthcare plan, to call Mass Health and to figure out if there is a low-cost healthcare plan that you can get making monthly payments, and like that, you don't. It's not as much for you, but it's like, okay, how does a family?
So if you get some form of mass help limited,
Yes.
does that jeopardize
That's-
you as well? If you get WIC for your child, does
Yes.
that jeopardize?
So WIC definitely it jeopardized. WIC, they cannot get WIC. They cannot get monetary assistance from any. So the rule is any assistance from the city, a state, municipality, or the federal government. So it's so broad that it's like everything. So as an attorney, I don't want them to get or apply for something that down the road, instead of getting them here, is going to have them deported. And in many cases, and this is the sad part, is that recently we're having people not applying or not getting medical assistance because they don't have the money, and because they don't have the money, they don't have the insurance, they can't afford it, and they can get into more illnesses instead of do preventive care. Yes.
This is a continuation of that. So I'm trying to understand something. Because immigration law is federal.
Yes.
So, for example, Massachusetts had mass health and affordable care thing before the federal program. So is the fear, so it seems if something's funded just in the state or the city, how can the federal government say, no, you can't get that, unless the fear is that it's the reporting systems, like if your data is being put into an information system, which is then shared inadvertently or not inadvertently with the federal government. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yes.
Immigration law is federal.
Yeah, so I refer as immigration law or immigration officers or anyone working with immigration as the king. They have power to see everything. And because they have that power over everything, they can find out, they can pull out records, they can, and one of the questions is that you cannot become a public charge. And because of this new policy, pretty much anybody on any sort of assistance, the government can accuse you of a public charge.
Even if you're, this is applying to people who don't have legal status?
This is for people that do not
So
have
if you
legal status.
But you're just waiting to be able to apply for your citizenship, you can't, right? Legally.
Well, that,
So that 5-year period, you can't apply.
yeah, so in the past, there's people with legal status that have applied for WIC programs and even assistance. That has never been an issue. There has never been a problem. However, on the application to get citizenship, when you do the application, there is a question now that says, have you received any assistance, any help? So it's kind of like, yes, it's like, oh, how do we answer this question? We had to say the truth. Hopefully we can explain it, or maybe they just ignore it and they don't get questioned and walk it through. It's just, so this is recent. So this is just recent. This has been in the last 2 months. So it's something very, very recent. There are a lot of changes that has happened in this year. A lot of stuff are being challenged in court. I feel that, I joke this with my clients, sometimes I feel like The Exorcist because I turn my head like, oh my God, what's in the news now? What am I reading now? What new changes are now that I had to be informed so I can explain to my clients how this will affect their case. I'm just waking up every day almost to the news of something new and more challenging, and makes my job harder to represent and to represent my clients. And I just, me as an attorney, I can speak for many attorneys across maybe the entire United States, it has been very challenging. I have many of my friends, many of my colleagues that they tell me they just don't want to do this anymore. It's a waste of air, a waste of breath. You know, it's like you're fighting and fighting and fighting. At the end of the day, right now is so anti-immigration, everything, that no matter what you do, what you say, what you argue, it sometimes can turn against your client and the other way. I do a lot of cases in immigration court, and one of the things that we've been having in Massachusetts, in immigration court in Massachusetts, we've been having with this new administration, I can say about 5 new judges has been added in the last 2 weeks, I guess, I believe. And there were 2 new judges that were added in the last year. So there were 2 judges actually that retired, but there's a lot more judges that there's been in the past. Majority of the new judges coming in right now were people that work for the Department of Homeland Security, for the Chief Counsel Office. So we're having them as judges. I mean, not for anything, but I feel that there is bias. And hopefully not. I'm really hoping for the better of my clients, but I do feel there's going to be a lot of bias towards more the side of the government position. And it's sad because you want to be able to present your case to someone who is fair, who's going to listen to both sides. Any other questions?
Let me ask you
Sure.
a personal question. So we were talking about sort of this, it's a mythologized dream of America.
Mm-hmm.
People from outside have. Maybe there is truth in it, but it is mythologized as well. And in your experience, just, but just how you think about kind of that, you know, America is a place where you realize your dreams and what the actual experience is, either personally or many of your clients, and how do you balance that in your life?
I feel that I was lucky when I came to this country. I have both parents living with me. My mom and my dad were college educated. And as soon as they arrived to this country, they were always involved with lawyers, with accountants. And growing up, I never felt apart from any other American child. I felt an American child growing up. I felt with the same opportunities, the same, I had the same, I would say the same treatment. I never saw any discrimination against me. I never saw anything being targeted towards me because I was from another country. Maybe it's because I grew up in an area where there were other immigrants from all different countries too. But that was my experience. I feel that this country does have a lot of opportunities to those that are lucky enough, and in my case, I have my parents very involved in schools, so they were able to put me in after-school programs, make sure my English was better. I had a tutor for English so I can write better. My mother used to make me read the newspaper in Spanish and write an article in Spanish on Saturdays, so I don't think that many parents do that, so my mom used to be tough on that with me. But I appreciate that now, that my parents were tough when it comes to education. In our family, my brother now is about to graduate from medical school. My sister now is a lieutenant in the Army, and she does engineer work, and she's also almost finishing her master's in engineering. So we all have been able to get college degrees and be able to get towards what we wanted to do, or our goals or our dreams. When it comes to my clients, I will talk a little bit more about my Central American clients, the people from, I have a lot of clients from the Quiche area. And the Quiche area is, they're Mayan descendants, and majority of them don't speak Spanish, Mayan. So they don't, they don't speak Spanish, they speak Quiche, and because of the lack of opportunities and the education, their education is very poor. Many of them never went to school, or they have done 1 or 2 years of elementary school, if that, but they tell me that even the teachers didn't speak Spanish well. They were teaching them in Quiche, or their education was very, very poor. So they come here with this dream of getting this better life for their children, But when their children go to school, they don't have the tools to help their children. Because they never were able to have that in their life. They don't know how to participate into their children's homework. And I did a little bit of teaching before becoming a lawyer, and I was doing tutoring and teaching for the migrant community. And I saw a lot. It was sad because I saw a lot of them. They don't know how to help them in their homework when their kids came with their homework.
But their lives were totally disrupted and destroyed by civil war in
Exactly.
Guatemala. The military would go and burn down their villages and shoot them and destroy their crops. They're people who come with such trauma.
Yes, and that's exactly what happens. They have so much trauma. The children that come from this country sometimes have trauma. They have experienced rape. Sometimes they have experienced abandonment from their parents. So especially in Guatemala, in this Quiche area, back in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a civil war. And the president ordered the guerrillas to get killed. The guerrillas wanted to influence communism in Central America. And the guerrillas went in hiding and forced and used to kill also the indigenous people, the Quiche people. They took over their homes. But then the government, in addition to that, in order to fight the guerrillas, they were also killing them. So they were getting killed by their own government in addition to the guerrillas. Or they had to serve the guerrillas in their homes in order to save the life.
It's not Rigoberta Menchú, who got the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, she's telling a different story to your story.
Yeah, so I mean, this is what I get from my clients and the different stories of my clients. So so from what I heard from different stories of my clients is that many of them had their uncles killed, their grandmothers killed, their parents killed, and they were left in the forest by themselves. And they had to pretty much survive on their own in the forest. Many of them had to eat grass, roots, and that now led to a history of not knowing how to be a parent because they didn't grow up with their parents. Also, depression, severe depression, and over there they turn into alcoholism. Also machismo, there's a history of machismo in this country against women. So women over there it's very dangerous to be a woman in these countries because you're a property in these countries. And there's also this history of abuse and neglect and abandonment. And it's not because it happened, not because their parents wanted to do that, but because their parents were killed. Or if they survived, they went into a severe depression to the point that they neglected their children. And that's what we're dealing in today's world. We're having gangs working as a powerful group, almost like military style, forcing children to join. And if they don't join, the children get killed. So this is why we have a lot of children immigrating on their own to the United States, because we're having, especially teenagers from the ages of 13, 14, 15, 16, all the way till their 20s. Especially if you are educated, if you go to school, it's even worse. The gangs want you because you can count money, you can work in their gang better. So we have a mass group of people leaving because these gangs have more control than the police and more than the government. And this is the sad situation that I feel it's happening in Central America. Any other questions? I don't know if anyone heard anything of what I was saying. I don't know if you guys have any questions in the back. No? Okay. All right, so it's been a pleasure And I guess you guys can come in and take a look of each of the pictures individually.
Thank you. Thank you.